Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We got a really great show for you today. We got Stuart J. Hooper on with us since the first time via the election and now the inauguration of Trump here on Making Sense of the Madness. And a lot has gone on domestically, and not a lot of people are really talking about what's going on with the foreign policy. There's a lot of talking points, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like we're getting the de-escalation we would like in Russia and Ukraine. And what does this ceasefire really mean in the Middle East? What is reality out there? We're going to break it all down. This is a cannot miss hour. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. We are now joined by Stuart J. Hooper. I encourage you to go follow him at the same name over on X, and you can also check him out on YouTube as well. I'm not sure if you're monetized yet or if that's even available. I'm trying. I put in for the remonetization after 6 long years, and the last time I did it, I think was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more, but I did it on air. I got a notice within 24 hours. No mas. This time, I think it's been almost a week. Maybe. I think I did it on Saturday. I think we're 6 full days in. We still haven't gotten a response. They have up to a month. Fingers crossed. At the same time, not really banking on it, despite the fact that President Trump has signed that very, very meaningful executive order claiming the government will no longer help censor anything. We'll see about that. So, Stuart, been a wild ride. What are your first impressions? Because, look, there is a lot to like here. And I'm waiting hand and foot on the declassification of the big assassination documents. That would be huge if it really occurs, and it occurs carte blanche. So give me the good, the bad, and what you think might be the ugly so far of a couple weeks in.
Well, great to be back with you, Jason, as always. And as it goes for YouTube, right now, I can't even break 50 views on a video. And that's not a joke. Go and look at my channel. I'm covering current events, current affairs, the Middle East, the election, you name it, topics that you think people might want to hear about. But yeah, I literally cannot even break 50 views on YouTube right now. So if you want to follow me over there, go for it, but I would actually advise people to go follow me on X and TikTok. TikTok seems to be the only place where creators can actually make an account, put something out there, and it actually gets pushed out to an audience. It's not always massive, but I can get hundreds of views, a couple thousand every now and again on a TikTok video. So TikTok, you wonder why they want to ban it. Well, I think this certainly has something to do with it. Trump. There's lots going on with him, good, bad, and ugly, as you say. Let's start with the good. So we got a freeze on all foreign aid, which I think is absolutely a positive move. This is something that I called for in an article called A Roadmap to an America First Foreign Policy, which was published by the Ron Paul Institute, where I explicitly argued in favor of this. Foreign aid is really nothing more than an international bribery scheme, in the sense that we're a big, powerful country. Let's write another country a check and tell them that they'll get more checks if they do or don't do what we want them to do for us, what's in our best interests. So foreign aid is always wrapped up in these altruistic values, and we're going to change the world and we're going to solve world hunger. In actual fact, it's little more than just international bribery. Do this for us, and you'll continue to ride the gravy train of the American taxpayer, which we call international aid. So that's a good thing, but it is a pause, and there were 2 exemptions there as well for Israel and Egypt. So the US understands still that the Middle East is its primary problem. Gaza is its primary problem. The Palestinians are its primary problem. And if you get Israel or Egypt on the wrong side of you geopolitically right now, that's not going to be good for the region. That's a surefire way to continue to allow the Middle East to blow up. So the US is trying to maintain the status quo in the Middle East by allowing the foreign aid to continue to flow to those two countries, which again reinforces my earlier point that it's essentially just an international bribery scheme. It's keeping Egypt and Israel on side. In terms of the bad, I think the primary bad thing that we need to look at is the attempt to, let's say, criminalize, perhaps that's not exactly the right word, but curtail so-called anti-Semitic speech in the United States with the direct targeting of foreigners that are here, saying that you can be deported if you say bad things about Israel. Now, unfortunately, for Israel, the military operation that it conducted over the last 15 months completely shattered its international legitimacy in a lot of ways. So calling the government of Israel and Netanyahu in particular into question, it used to be somewhat easy for them to just say, oh, well, these people are just anti-Semites. These people don't like Jewish people. You've heard it all before. Now people are saying, well, actually, no, we don't like you, Netanyahu, and we don't like the Israeli government because you've just killed probably at least 50,000. I would estimate probably somewhere closer to 100,000 people in Gaza over the last 15 months. So there's now this very, very, very immediate critique of the state of Israel, which is causing the massive international reputational damage. But the thing is, this simply cannot happen. If you are in the United States legally, which is the distinction here, the Constitution and all of its protections and all of the things that it stops the government from doing to citizens, that also applies to everybody else. Again, with the caveat, they have to be here legally. So I would say those are the two big things right now. We really don't need Trump wasting his time and attention on tracking down so-called thought criminals. And I thought that's what the conservative side of the aisle was supposed to be against as well. So,
yeah, I am pretty disturbed about that. Look, if we've got foreign nationals and students that have committed some type of crime, okay, maybe I'm on board. Like, again, assault, being violent, destruction of property, but taking part in a protest, and especially when we're talking about a cultural clash that has gone on for millennia. In many cases, I think that that's bad. I really hope this isn't an indication that Trump is serious about signing some kind of executive order banning the burning of the American flag. You may not like it. It should not be a crime. And that anti-Semitic bill really expands upon the idea of not just foreign nationals. That's the tip of the iceberg. They're looking into other measures. So once again, I might not like what some people have to say. We have to protect free speech for real at all costs. And I would also say that this move to legitimize Guantanamo Bay and send anybody there, whether they're illegals or not, is bad news brown as well. But I want to focus on the Middle East. While you're speaking, I still have dead kids in my feed. That story about Gaza is... as of the recording of this video, that's absolutely still happening. Now, on the flip side of that, you also have, a lot of people are talking about the hostages that the Palestinians and Hamas had, but in exchange for that, there were prisoners that were women and children that were also exchanged. But here, Israel is barring the family members of these deported Palestinian detainees from traveling to meet them in that exchange deal, which is insane. And we also have to understand that, there is an ongoing release of these hostages that are supposedly keeping these conflicts at a minimum. So what is the reality of what's actually going on in this ceasefire, in your opinion? At the bare minimum, it does seem to be at least a de-escalation with Lebanon and Iran, but at the same time, Iran is also on its heels. So give me what you got.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. Is somewhat of a de-escalation, but the emergency is certainly not over. Definitely not for the people that are in Gaza, which is still somewhere around 2 million people. They are returning to their homes, as the Israeli government is telling us, as the Western mainstream media is telling us. but they're essentially returning to piles of rubble. I mean, the entire strip has been completely destroyed. Most of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged in some significant way. There's no infrastructure, there's no nothing. When you think about the generational impact that this will have, there is no longer any schooling system in Gaza. There's no educational system in Gaza. But there are certainly going to be a hell of a lot of angry children that are going to ask, where did my little brother go? Where did my little sister go? Where did my dad go? What happens to my mother? And then what do we have? A new spark for international terrorism coming out of the Middle East. Because this is just the unfortunate reality. Ron Paul spoke about this throughout his entire congressional career. Blowback. You can go around the world and do all sorts of things that you want to do, interfere in all sorts of places because you think you're bringing peace or democracy or you're solving a problem. Not everyone's going to see it like that. And when you cause this level of destruction, it's guaranteed there's going to be blowback. You and I have spoken many times, you well before I even got into this game, of false flag terrorism, the idea that the government sets people up or puts them in a position to carry out terror on behalf of the government itself. That will not be required for the foreseeable future. You're going to have plenty of legitimate blowback that starts to come out of the Middle East, I'd say, in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be again and again and again. Now, the geopolitical tensions, though, like you said, they have subsided a little, which is good. Iran, Lebanon, still some serious tensions there, of course, but it's not like it was a couple of months ago. And we'll see what happens with the nuclear stuff as well, and Iran and Trump. I think if Trump really wants to be a peacemaker, a deal maker, and to leave a real legacy for the world, he needs to pursue a deal with Iran. He was willing to walk into North Korea and open the door there to a deal, and of course, nothing really happened. Do the same thing with Iran. I mean, can you imagine the headlines if Donald Trump landed in Tehran tomorrow and they start to have a conversation and they start to come up with a deal? If he can do that, that would be a real legacy, and that would actually solidify him as a peacemaker, as a deal maker.
And I totally and completely agree with you because, like you said, there is the de-escalation. But as you saw in that headline, Iran is on its toes. There are the threats against their nuclear sites. And once again, we've heard this thing time and time and time again. Iran is, a month away or a year away from a nuclear weapon. We don't really know what they have on that level, but people don't understand, for the Middle East, they really do have a first world military. And for us to get involved with a real conflict there, it is not Iraq. It is not Syria. It's certainly not Afghanistan. I mean, I go down the line. This is the real deal. And the other thing is, there is a real alliance with Russia. We're going to push into Russia some in the coming segments, but when we come back, I want to focus in on Tulsi Gabbard and what she had to say at these confirmation hearings, because again, I think this is a move in the right direction. Did she toe the line on some things? Sure, but very powerful answers regarding Snowden, Syria, Assad, and beyond. We're going to get into all of it, more making sense of the madness after this.
Everything you're showing us, Steve, I'm looking at it going, I want one of those. I want one of those. And I think you guys are too. So don't forget to go to the Patriot TV store and you can see all of Steve's Made in America shirts and just everything. Shirts, hats, socks, sunglasses, you name it, workout gear, you've got everything.
So we're going to bring some of our other people back again to show you some of the other items.
Okay.
And we keep changing so you get a good idea of what we carry.
Yeah, I mean,
See a lot of,
exactly. Look
items.
at the variety and look at the choices you have. Today's guest again was Steve Stern of the Flag Shirt Company. And again, they've been in business over 70 years. High quality products, fast delivery, and amazing customer service. So for any reason something doesn't fit, you can send it right back. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, the Patriot TV store. You've got to go to Patriot TV store and get your items now.
What do a neurosurgeon,
And we are back. Yep, got a little marbles in my mouth. I usually don't, but it happens. You know, there have been a lot of confirmation hearings. Hegseth, I'm up in the air on. I'm certainly not here to cry his praises by any means. Seems a pretty down-the-line military guy, but at the same time, I don't think that he's necessarily a warmonger. He is very, very pro-Israeli policy. However, we have to understand that, just like Trump is. I don't know that Tulsi Gabbard is going to bring any balance to that perspective in the sense that she has at least publicly been pretty pro-Israeli as well. However, when put on the spot via these confirmation hearings and discussing Snowden and reaffirming the idea that it is only because of him that the American people learned about the NSA spying on them, that is essential. When even talking about the Duma attacks, although she ends up backing the president's decisions, she does bring up that she hasn't seen any independent investigation on those attacks. I think that's a cop-out. You and I both know the OPCW documents of their investigation leaked via WikiLeaks, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe they didn't want to get into Assange. She was very prepared for all the attacks, and believe me, the attacks were there. What are your thoughts on Gabbard overall, and what do you think she'll be doing if she is confirmed as the DNI? And I think she will be confirmed.
Yeah, she's a very interesting figure. I've gone back and forth on her personally, whether or not strong supporter, not so much. I think there is a significant weakness there when it comes to the Israeli stuff. I mean, the fact that I don't think she's managed to put out one tweet about Gaza, about the extent of the devastation that's happened there. But on a lot of these other issues, she's very, very, very good. Syria, for example. So we have John Brennan, of course, Barack Obama's director of the CIA, who has been out in force on MSNBC and anywhere else that will have him, trying to raise the red flag, raise the alarm about Tulsi. She's a threat to national security. She might withhold things from the president. She might skew information to the president. She's not going to look out for the country. She's a Putin puppet. She's an Assad apologist. We've heard all of it from John Brennan. Well, it could be the fact that John Brennan was running this massive billion-dollar-a-year CIA operation in Syria that was trying to overthrow the government of Syria, which led to the expansion, the creation, if not the creation of ISIS, the facilitation of the complete destruction and destabilization of the Middle East via ISIS. He was running the CIA operation that facilitated all of that, and now he's telling us that the person they're trying to nominate who exposed that, she's the problem. Well, actually, John Brennan, I'd probably say you're the problem here. Tulsi's evidently not. And I think what she has to say on those kind of things is very important. And there needs to be a really significant curtailing of the CIA, which, again, I would argue needs to be shut down. You probably do need an intelligence service, but I think at this point with the CIA, it's probably time to start over. Need a clean slate here, need to clean out all of those holes, drain that swamp that is the CIA. I mean, if you want to point to just one entity that represents the swamp, it has to be the CIA broadly. It just, at this point, it cannot be trusted. So I think it's great that she's potentially going to be able to curtail some of those things, but will she actually have the power to do it on her own? Unlikely.
Well, let me just say this. You know, you talked about John Brennan, and another highlight of this administration so far has been stripping Brennan, Michael Hayden, and many others of their security clearance. That's never been done before on that level, ever. I mean, think about that. That's a huge move. Can you kind of speak to that and that importance? Because that really did allow this subset of quote-unquote ex-intel officers to legitimately communicate and still have clearances and discussions with operatives that were still on the books. That takes all that away from them. So now this time around, if they actually do get caught colluding, I mean, that could be a serious charge. And let's be honest, This administration coming in damn well knows that they made up Russiagate, that they colluded with one another. Right now, the FBI is having some serious problems with the Seth Rich investigation, because it seems like this administration might be releasing those documents that have been delayed for some time. And I think people are going to be for a pretty damn rude awakening when it comes to that as well, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, excellent points. And when it does come to these people and their security clearances and who they know, that really is what this whole structure is. It's not what you know, it's who you know. This is a collection of power elites, as C. Wright Mills rightly called them in his text of the same name from the 1950s, where if you allow people at the very tip-top echelons of society to interact with one another, to know one another, they're going to work together, and they're going to figure out that it's better for them to work together than to be against one another, and they form these blocks of political social power, which is able to have a very real impact on the world around us, which we absolutely see within the intelligence community, within the broader, what you might call deep state, which is a term that many academics, which I of course have to call myself one of them, are just afraid to use. But you of course know that this is a term that came from an academic, Peter Dale Scott. He coined this term, and he has used it extensively to present empirical evidence of what a deep state actually is and the type of things that it can actually do. So if you start to remove these security clearances, you start to extract some of these very important people from that block, from that blob, as it's called in the foreign policy world. Perhaps you might actually be able to do something to dismantle it, but I still wouldn't hold your breath just yet. I move in the right direction, but we're probably not where we need to be just yet. Oh, you're muted, Jason.
Thank you, sir, because I didn't realize that. I had a little coffee cough. See, I'm really killing it today, everybody. I got marbles in my mouth. I've got mute buttons on. We're dominating today. So before we move completely away from Israel, I want to get into the tech realms a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. We've seen shakeups in this administration. There should be concern with the Larry Ellisons and the Sam Altmans and the rebranding of the Zuckerbro and the Muskernuts right there. Big time. That's a whole nother show for us. But here's the thing with artificial intelligence. We've talked about the garbage in, garbage out. But the fact of the matter is, they're just like when you see game systems that get hacked, right, and modified. There are hacks and modifications, and if you don't have the right programming, after you start to feed it certain types of information that it can't refute and wasn't programmed to refute, things can happen. So we have this right here. Hasbara Hitch, pro-Israel social media bot, goes rogue. Calls IDF soldiers white colonizers in apartheid Israel. The AI-powered bot criticized the same social media accounts it was meant to promote, even going so far as to deny the murder of an Israeli family on October 7th and blame Israel for the U.S. plan to ban TikTok. So that's quite a narrative shift. It does seem like AI, even though that happened, it gets brought into check very quickly. Right? And even if you look at this DeepSeek, obviously it looks like it was trained on elements of ChatGPT that were stolen. And it won't say a bad word about Winnie the Pooh himself, Xi Jinping. So what are your thoughts in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, this has been really fascinating. I started looking at this in a bit of detail last night, and I think it's just time to admit that in the Western world, all we really have is crony capitalism. Because now we have two examples of where you get a Chinese company that emerges from seemingly nowhere, completely dominates a particular area of the tech market, and all of a sudden, it's stealing our data, and all of a sudden, our governments care so much about our digital rights that they're going to go ahead and ban these apps for us, which is what the Italian government just announced they were going to do yesterday in regards to DeepSeek. So in my analysis, what we have going on here is just pure crony capitalism. We have the protection of Western tech giants at the expense of Chinese potential tech giants. I think TikTok absolutely is a giant at this point. But that's really what's going on here, I think. All we have a completely captured capitalist, again, quote, capitalist system in the Western world. And this is not coming from someone that loves China. I've never been to China. I don't necessarily want to go to China. I don't think the communist government is the way to go. I think they have their own problems with crony capitalism over there as well. But if we want to stand on a hill and say we're free market and we believe in entrepreneurship and we believe in technological change and development, well, you got to be for it no matter where it's coming from. So this has been a huge problem, not only for the tech industry, but also the Trump administration, because literally 2 days or something like that before this happened, he came out and said, we're investing $500 billion in AI development. So I think the corporate America really needs a wake-up call. It gets this every now and again, but there's just so much money in corporate America that it borders on ridiculous, and there's just this ingrained belief that unless it costs X billions of dollars, it must be junk. Well, evidently that's not the case, and we see it time and time again.
Now, again, right before we kind of leave Israel and go into the Russia-Ukraine conflict, some people, I'd say many people in this arena, are aware of Pegasus and the Israeli software that was on a multitude of phones. People still really, again, can't grasp that. Luckily, Rogan popularized it somewhat. That's old software. Now, we also have software that attacks not just hardware, but software. And right now, we've got WhatsApp that says that the Israeli spyware company Paragon is targeting their users. This is a Meta-owned platform. And this is often what we talk about, that even when we have alliances, such as something like Five Eyes, there is all sorts of disputes, internal espionage, whether it be corporate, whether it be government, or a combination of both happening at any given time.
Yeah, completely. And thank you, Carl. You see, I've got my own issues on this end too, Jason, so you're not alone. No, this is interesting. And something I think is really interesting about the Snowden leaks, which I think is a point of criticism that you can point at, that is, well, those of us in the alternative media, those of us that were paying attention, kind of already knew that those things were going on. He kind of just gave us the names for things and then it officially confirmed it, but it was obvious to most of us that was the reality anyway. So when you get leaks, when you get exposures like this, yeah, it's kind of useful. But for those of us paying closer attention, let's say, it's obvious that that's already going on. But as you said at the start of that, what really matters is what's behind the scenes. What do they have behind the scenes that we have no idea about? Which, again, most academics refuse to even contemplate that idea, refuse to even consider the thought that the government might be doing nefarious things behind the scenes, that any government might be doing that, or democracies definitely wouldn't do that, right? Of course not, which is a complete joke. But yeah, when it comes to this and Meta, and there is inter-competition between some of these companies, and I forget who I was listening to, but someone was explaining that Zuckerberg really does have complete control of Meta and that whole ecosystem, and he very much sees it as his own personal fiefdom, so to speak, despite the fact that, again, it's a publicly traded company, board directors, so on and so forth, whatever. It's very much under his thumb. Which also, going back to the point you said probably about 5 minutes ago now, the rebranding of Zuckerberg to Zuckerbro, coming in with a t-shirt, the gold chain. This is all calculated. This isn't probably someone that's had an epiphany and all of a sudden that they want free speech in the entire world. That's not the case. So we need to pay close attention to this, and I think it's very important.
We are going to take another break. We're going to come back. We're going to get into Ukraine, Russia, the reality there. You're not going to want to miss it. More Making Sense of the Madness after this.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
We are back. Stuart, let's get into the Ukrainian-Russian conflict that did not end on day one. Okay? Look, I'm not necessarily mad at the guy. He did a lot on day one. He did a lot on day two. He's continuing to do a lot on a lot of issues. Again, I've criticized him on the ones that I'm worried about. It does seem like he's trying to figure out how he is going to de-escalate this thing. He did meet with Volodymyr Zelensky prior to his inauguration after he had won the presidency. Vladimir Putin has said now channels are open. At the same time, this conflict is raging on. Now, you talked about a freeze, but people, again, just cannot contemplate this in this part of the world because they're not living it like the Russians or the Ukrainians. This really is like WW2 style meat grinder on the ground. No joke. This isn't modern warfare where the Americans are essentially kicking the hell out of the Middle Eastern opposition, where occasionally there's a tragedy. There's a tragedy going on every single day there, sometimes every single hour. And recently, North Korea sent some of their troops to the meat grinder. Guess what? They got pulled right out of the front line recently. Even with the agreements, Little Rocket Man probably had no idea. I mean, that's the real deal. It's actually happening. At the same time, Russia does seem to be gaining some ground in Ukrainian cities, what's left of them. I mean, take a look there. That's certainly not where I want to live. And may have future advances. Things like this, of course, did come up in the Gabbard hearing as well. Where are we really at in that? Because NATO seems to be doubling down, right? They're not pulling back whatsoever. They want this to continue. Obviously, and it's crazy to say this now after living through the neocons and the Republicans, almost everybody in the Democratic Party is still for this war. If they could get away with rocking that little pin, they probably still would be. So where is this going? And by the way, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the Mitch McConnells, they still want to stay there pretty vocally too. It's kind of gross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. I think what you said is really important, though. That this is not a walk in the park modern war where there's just one side that completely technologically dominates the other, and then they just swoop in after the airstrikes, after the bombing campaigns, after the drone strikes, and then just clean up the stragglers. This is two symmetrical forces crashing together and producing hell on earth, which is what we know symmetrical forces do when they clash with one another. This really is like World War II, World War I, even with trench warfare. I don't know if you've seen any of these videos, but there are videos of these soldiers in trenches. They are literally feet away from the people that they are shooting at and throwing grenades at, charging at with knives, all sorts of nasty stuff that you can't imagine. And especially in the Western world that is now so removed from that, it's really hard to contemplate what what this even means, but it is complete human annihilation. It is a complete meat grinder, and it is essentially at this point for absolutely nothing, because both sides are not moving anywhere really. The Russians slowly, you could say, maybe they're making a tiny bit of progress here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going well for anyone. So the best move, I would think, right now would be an immediate ceasefire. We stop these people from just killing one another endlessly for no reason whatsoever. Maybe if you want to pause and keep the forces where they are, okay, fine. But let's just have a ceasefire and then come to the discussion table, because the human devastation here is just not worth it. The amount of Ukrainians that have been killed, the amount of Russians that have been killed, and you see all these bodies just on the floor in these random fields all over the place, and it's just like, what was the point in this? What was the point? Was that this person's life? That was this person's fate in life, was to just live and have all these hopes and dreams about what they wanted to do and their future and things like that, and they just end cold and dead in the middle of a field somewhere, completely lost and forgotten to history. So I think that's really important, and if we can humanize the conflict in that way, I'm not saying go out and watch these videos, you definitely don't want to do that, but if we can at least spread an awareness of what it actually means to be in these battles, I think that might help push us down the road of a settlement. But yeah, you also mentioned NATO. Now, NATO is a transnational entity that contains transnational elites, meaning people that are far above and beyond individual countries. They're beyond democratic control, and they think that they're really important, and they think that they can pull the levers of power, and that they should continue to have power and expand their power, so on and so forth. Trump can end this immediately. I think he needs to seriously consider disbanding NATO, removing the United States from NATO, whatever it takes, because this is an entity that has not done anything good for the world. It's, of course, obvious that this is the reason why Putin invaded Ukraine, and he didn't choose to invade anywhere else. And the decision to support Ukraine to the extent that the West has done throughout this conflict, it's pushed Russia closer to China, which every geopolitical expert in history worth their salt has ever said should be the last thing that you ever want to do. If you create an Eastern Bloc that is resource-rich Russia with population-rich China, you have completely tipped the scale of the world in the favor of the East, and wave goodbye to everything like dollar domination, the state of the United States in the world, the debt crisis that will explode in the United States. Yeah, this is not good. But NATO managed to do this. The Biden administration really managed to do this, and of course it was Kamala who famously goes and essentially makes a direct offer to Zelensky. Hey, you should be in NATO. We want to get you in NATO. And then what happens? Bang, there we go. But again, it's not fair to blame it entirely on Kamala and Biden. This has been a long-term project. And for everything that we hear about Russia's trying to expand, China's trying to expand, it's NATO that's been on the non-stop expansion mission since the end of the Cold War, when it should have just all wrapped up.
You know, you mentioned NATO, and now you have the former head of NATO becoming a Bilderberg steering member. Now, he's already been in the club for some time. Bilderberg, to me, is the apex event for that Anglo-American Israeli power structure. I think that really has illustrated itself to the people that take a good look at the players and the movers and shakers that surround those events and what they do, not only in that coming year, but in the years to come. What kind of move does that make for Bilderberg? Because you also have Peter Thiel right there, and he has really gotten behind Trump as a ally yet again. Talk about a rebranding. Talking to Joe Rogan about the Epstein case, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is the Palantir guy. He's involved as much as anybody with what NATO might be doing. And Stoltenberg is now there on that panel. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very important. I'm not sure if we know where Bilderberg is yet this year or not. If it's in the United States, I think we should go. I think we should go and cover it on the ground. I went to the Bilderberg event in Watford in England a few years back, and was there to see the the global elites coming in all of these dark cars, covering their faces with newspapers, not wanting the world to know that they are there. Again, a topic which most of the academic world refuses to touch, refuses to acknowledge, but it's a very real center of global power, and it's a center of global power that we shouldn't be afraid to talk about. Also, along these lines, David Lammy, the current British Defence Secretary, he has been attending Bilderberg Group meetings for years at this point, and now he's in one of the most powerful positions in the British government. So Bilderberg is having a pretty good time of it, or at least maybe it was. We'll see what happens with Trump. Some of his appointees, have any of them been to Bilderberg conferences before? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Bilderberg, a very real center of power. It's really I'd say the global political and military center of the global order. They do some economic stuff there, but that's more and more, I think, being farmed out now to Davos, World Economic Forum. But yeah, this is a very important entity. It still exists. These important people are still going there. Why would they go there unless it's important? Why would they go there unless it has influence? So this is very real. I think we need to keep a close eye on it. And if we could, put it on a short leash. But I don't think we really have the capabilities to do that because it's beyond all democratic control.
You know, the World Economic Forum is the current mouthpiece for modern day globalization and where they want to drive society. But I believe that this is the underlying group that actually makes those things happen and really puts the deals in place and the opposition in place. That doesn't mean they're gods. That doesn't mean they're omnipotent. That doesn't mean they always get their way. But they are certainly a very, very large power block that is almost never covered in the media. Props to Charlie Skelton, who's one of the few people that continues to do that. And we're going to continue to focus on that as well. We're going to come back. We're going to round out the rest of the Trump administration with Stuart J. Hooper. You're not going to want to miss it. Final segment of the show after this.
Everything you're showing us, Steve, I'm looking at it going, I want one of those. I want one of those. And I think you guys are too. So don't forget to go to the Patriot TV store and you can see all of Steve's Made in America shirts and just everything. Shirts, hats, socks, sunglasses, you name it, workout gear, you've got everything.
So we're going to bring some of our other people back again to show you some of the other items.
Okay.
And we keep changing so you get a good idea of what we carry.
Yeah, I mean,
See a lot of,
exactly. Look at the variety and look at the choices you have. Today's guest again was Steve Stern of the Flag Shirt Company. And again, they've been in business over 70 years. High quality products, fast delivery, and amazing customer service. So for any reason something doesn't fit, you can send it right back. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, the Patriot TV store. You've got to go to Patriot TV store and get your items now.
What do a neuro...
And we are back. Stuart, you know, we just talked about these Russian tariffs that are coming into play. For those that don't know, Russia is quietly imposing tariffs on their ally, China. And is this the new model? Is this the new move? You know, obviously Trump ran talking tariff, and he's really delivering on that. I thought he was going to quiet down on the idea of getting rid of the IRS, but it seems like he's doubling down on that. Now, I'd be kicking and screaming in the streets if the federal income tax all of a sudden was nothing more than a fairy tale and the IRS was gone, as the vast majority of Americans would. In fact, I would go so far to argue just about every American citizen who doesn't have a severe mental illness would really think fantastic move. But, you know, there are out there that would be stumping for the federal income tax. That would be revolutionary. But we are seeing an economic shift, and I wonder if part of this quote-unquote golden age is also going to be a shift into different types of digital currencies, whether or not they're quote-unquote centralized like a CBDC or not.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to look at all of this. I think the IRS, though, I think the IRS needs to go. It really needs to go. Of course, it's tax season. I've just been looking at some W-2s, and yeah, let's just say I'm not happy about the IRS at this point. If that did go away, that really would be revolutionary. The tariff thing, I mean, this may work out, it may not. It's essentially going to be somewhat of an economic experiment. So Trump is saying that he wants to drill, baby, drill, get us a lot more oil flowing, get the price of gas down. He's even saying that he needs the Saudis to go ahead and get the price of oil down as well. Let's say that all works out. Let's just say gas is $1 a gallon, right? We can dream. Well, if that's the case, that price is down. But if you're simultaneously putting tariffs on all of these foreign goods, which we know the United States relies upon, the companies that make those goods are not just going to eat the tariff, because in many cases they won't be able to. If your profit margin is only 5 or 10% on a product, and all of a sudden you're getting some massive new tariff that you've got to pay, the price of the product has got to go up. That's basic economics. There would be some companies that could probably eat that, but will they? No, because they still have profit that they need to, profit targets they need to meet, shareholders' expectations, you name it. So broadly, this is going to be a time of economic experimentation. Is it going to work? I'm not sure. With some countries, yes. With some products, yes. We just saw it with Colombia, for instance, which brought in the immigration issue as well, because the Colombian government knew very rapidly that if it faced that level of taxation, it was going to destroy its businesses, which rely on exports to the United States. So in some places and some goods, this may work and it may be brilliant. In other places and other goods, it might be real bad real quickly.
What do you think about the idea of rebranding this the new golden age? Because like you said, if the IRS really went by the wayside, that's huge, that's big. At the same time, we're in a time of fiat currency for some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Biden had a lot to do with the inflation, with the policies, but the big glaring, the 800-pound gorilla / elephant in the room is Operation Warp Speed and the massive redistribution of wealth, especially amongst the billionaire class. You look at what the Muskernuts was worth prior to COVID 1984 and the exponential return after. And he is not the exception. He seems to be the rule with that class of people. So where is this really moving? Like, Larry Fink was just over at Davos, very, very smug still. Although it did seem like Daddy Trump put a lot of them to heel when he did his little conference and had his moments. They're not, like you said, they're still meeting. They still want to push their agenda forward. They may be pulling back on some of the more absurd stuff in the public arena, but these technologies are going nowhere. That wealth transfer only seems to get more. Zuckerberg's about to build his large-scale AI data center, which is the size of a good chunk of Lower Manhattan. One center. Okay? I mean, these things are happening at a rapid pace, and that's the one thing I don't think most people, not just in this country, but around the world, are ready for. They're going full force with the next level of technology in the sense of automation and AI. It's happening.
Yeah, completely. And when it comes to the income tax as well and the IRS, again, you're looking at that and you're looking at this giant chunk of money, and what do you get for it? You get nothing. You get a massive bloated federal government that seemingly is completely incompetent. You get a military-industrial complex. You get foreign wars. You get the world pushed to the brink of World War III. So I think Trump's moves to also curtail the size of the federal government, and we've had this offer of an 8-month payout to anyone that wants to leave their federal job. This could be a good thing. But again, it needs to be done, I would argue, in a more structured way. He went ahead this past week and said federal funding for almost everything is just done. We're putting a pause on that. He had to backtrack on that because that was not well thought out. That was not well laid out to the American people. This was not necessarily a bad idea that you want to shrink the size of the government. Absolutely, you need to. It's one of the biggest employers in the world, which you could probably say is the People's Liberation Army in China, Walmart, and then the American federal government. That's insane for a country that's supposed to be of, by, and for the people, and really reliant upon democratic values, not a bureaucracy larger than anything the founders could have ever imagined. So I think if you can do away with that, that's good. But I think Trump is in some serious need of focus with some of these things. I think you saw that also with the pardoning of the January 6th people. Pardoning all of those people with one sweeping brush, I would not have advised him to do that. Bad idea. The second that one of those guys gets a speeding ticket, that's going to be international news. That's going to be bad politically for us. So were there a lot of people that were swept up unfairly in that? Were there a lot of non-violent people? Yes. Should they have probably been pardoned? Yes. But the people that were tasing police officers, attacking police officers, breaking windows, and you had evidence of that, yeah, I don't think that this was the smart thing to just go ahead and pardon all those. So I think he's on the right track with some of this stuff. But he needs someone to focus him in. If this is your goal, you got to be a little bit more specific about it and think 5 steps down the road, not just this is immediately a good headline. You need to think a little bit clearer, I think, on some of this stuff. But again, I'd argue mostly he's been on the right track, but some of it, again, just needs the focus. I don't know what you think to that.
I mean, to me, again, I've always said the people that caused violence on January 6th, whatever, but then they were over prosecuted at that same level. Nobody took out a gun. Nobody stabbed anybody. Nobody assaulted with the intent to kill. So, just getting that done on day one, I actually do think is huge. I mean, 99.9% of those people didn't deserve to be there. The Tarios of the world, the Joe Biggses of the world, etc. However, my next big thing is going to be on the declassification. Like I said, I think that he is on the right track. I want to see more of it. Kash Patel just alluded to Epstein. Again, I don't know if that's going to be a possibility, but I really hope 9/11 is in the conversation. They just attacked RFK Jr. for that in his hearings. And
I didn't see that. What did they say about that with him?
They brought up his tweet. I actually just recorded that video that will be airing actually before this one this evening. That we're watching. I'm going to repost it so you can go check it out. But Tim Kaine, the vice presidential candidate for Hillary Clinton, took him to task for his tweet regarding not taking sides on the 9/11 issue and the fact that so many of these conspiracy theories have become true that he's not going to judge. He's just going to look at the evidence. He got totally attacked for that. Rudy Giuliani has said, release all the damn documents. I mean, if that guy's going to say it, release all the damn documents. I think that's look, it's not going to come out and say the government did this, but it's going to talk about funding. It's going to talk about organizations. It's going to talk about other nation states. It's going to talk about dual operatives. It's going to talk about war games in a different light. I guarantee it's going to talk about the demolition of those buildings and other explosions in another light. Guaranteed, okay, in some respect. What do you think about the documents? Are we going to get reality from the assassination documents? And how do you feel about the possibility of the 9/11 documents?
Yeah, I mean, this is all excellent. Assuming that it reaches the conclusion that we're hoping it reaches, that we do actually get everything, and it does actually tell us the legitimate story of what happened. But getting everything, I think, is going to be the problem. There's many ways that agencies can stop you from getting everything. But again, all of this is excellent because we're supposed to live in democracies, and transparency is supposed to be part of a democracy, that you can see what your government's doing. The classification system is so ridiculously bloated that transparency doesn't even come into the equation. It doesn't even come into the same room as what goes on here. There are estimates that there are many, many, many times the Library of Congress worth of stuff that's declassified over and over and over again, that's classified, sorry, not declassified, but classified by the federal government, which is just simply ridiculous. Perhaps they will go ahead and give us everything maybe on one of the assassinations, maybe try and throw a little bit of bait out there for everyone and try and clear up some conversations like that. But 9/11, I believe we will never, ever see the full story of 9/11. Because quite literally, our entire society and foreign policy is structured on 9/11.
You're right, but I hope you're wrong. It is structured.
Me too.
I hope we get the documents. We have run out of time. Stuart J. Hooper, follow him across the board. You know the drill. It is not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. Love you guys, and see you on the flip side.
America.